I graduated from law school in May 1994 and took the July 1994 California bar examination. 2 days after the bar exam, I hauled most of my possessions to a storage unit in Los Angeles, put the rest in my car, and drove home to Minnesota. I didn't have much money, I didn't have a job, I didn't have any prospects, I didn't have a plan, and I didn't want to think about it. A few days after I got home, my dad and I packed our things and drove north to Bayfield, Wisconsin, the gateway to the Apostle Islands. Dad's sailboat was at Port Superior, a postcard-perfect marina on Lake Superior. We were going to spend a week cruising Michigan's remote Keweenaw Peninsula. The second stop on our voyage was the small town of Ontonagon, Michigan. After dinner, I played three-handed cribbage with sailors from a neighboring boat. I was as far away from Los Angeles as I could get. This was just what I needed, the routine of sailing, listening to halyards thumping against masts in small marinas as I fell asleep, reading, writing, eating every meal with my dad, and walking the streets of small towns. Dad was the captain and I was the first mate, as it had always been in our years sailing Lake Superior together. He would gracefully dock the boat, step ashore, and immediately start a conversation with anyone in the marina while I got everything shipshape. It was a comforting familiarity. The twin towns of Houghton and Hancock were the biggest cities we visited. One night, Dad came back from the movie theater, having just seen Jim Carrey in The Mask. I had stayed in that evening because I'd already seen the movie in Los Angeles. When Dad got back, he couldn't stop laughing as he described the movie to me, especially the scene where Jim's dog wears the mask. My dad's laugh was contagious, and soon we were both laughing as we recalled our favorite scenes. When we were in the beautiful town of Copper Harbor, Michigan, we hiked from the marina to the Lake Superior shore. It was 7 or 8 o'clock at night, but still light in those northern latitudes. I remember standing on the shore, listening to the wind with the waves breaking at my feet, and it seemed like I could feel the earth spinning. I was so in the moment. I had a lot of time to think on that trip, sailing along at 6 knots. I couldn't believe that for the first time in many, many years, I would not be returning to school that fall. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I could feel my future looming ahead of me, and I was both anxious and excited to get back to Los Angeles and get started. Looking back after all these years, I wish I would have talked to my dad more on that trip. Of course, we spoke and told stories and laughed together, but I wish I would have shared with him my excitement and worry, my hopes and fears. He was a salesman, not a lawyer, but I know he would have given me insight, advice, and comfort if I had just asked. I'm sure he could sense my uncertainty and nervousness as I stood at the precipice of my future. He didn't ask me about my plans, but let me be with my thoughts. We were Minnesotans, comfortable with quiet togetherness. We visited Black River Harbor, Ontonagon, Houghton Hancock, Grand Traverse Bay, Loch LaBelle, and Copper Harbor on that trip. We saw the Porcupine Mountains and beautiful lighthouses. We sailed, hiked, went to the movies, and listened to the Indigo Girls. Our last day on the boat was a slow sail back to Bayfield. We had enjoyed sailing Lake Superior together for the past 12 years. But as we pulled into the slip and secured the boat, I didn't know when we would sail together again. I realized I was an adult and had my own life now in Southern California, separate and apart from my parents. 3 days later, I left Minneapolis and drove west to California and the rest of my life. I didn't have much money, I didn't have a job, I didn't have any prospects, I didn't have a plan. But I was renewed and I was excited for my future. We lost my father on June 11th, 2012. A few summers after my father's death, I took my family to Bayfield. One day we were on a small ferry taking us to tour a lighthouse in the Apostle Islands. We were sitting on the top deck, and the ferry had just left Bayfield when I saw my father's boat sailing in the channel. I was taken 20 years back to the summer of 1994 in my sailing trip with my father after I had taken the bar exam. We all have those moments in life that are so simple and yet so meaningful. That 1994 summer trip with my dad is one of mine.